Sammy Law and his wife Jean lived out in the boonies, not far from Coleraine here in Northern Ireland. He had seen combat up close in Korea, and if it hadn't been for some friends, he would have got more than a bullet in his ankle. Jean was a hospitable soul, and like so many other country women, she could bake delicious bread. Smother it with butter as it came straight from the griddle or the hob, and a king couldn't eat better. It was Sammy who took me fishing for the very first time in my life. I spent the night with him talking, as usual, late into the night. I'd barely shut my eyes when Sammy shook me awake to go fishing. It was 4:30 in the morning. I didn't know such an ungodly hour existed until that moment. It was bitter cold, wet, windy and dark as we headed to the river. And as I shivered, I wondered if I was in my right mind. But it was too late to debate the wisdom of the venture. He put a worm on my hook and threw the line into the dark river for me, and then moved off into the shadows farther down. In the early morning quietness, I could hear him humming to himself now and then, and I could hear the swish of the line as he repeatedly cast it. He was loving it, and I was miserable, stone miserable. And the worm on my line wasn't even trying. If I ever knew, I don't remember how long I stood there wishing that I was back in my bed, or at least somewhere comfortable. Then I felt it. A fish was nibbling on my worm, and I felt it coming up through the line into the rod, into my hands, and from there down somewhere behind my belly button. Down there in the dark, beyond my vision, there was life tugging on my line. That rascal ate up all my worm and then took off. Safest meal he ever had, I'm sure. But he'd made contact with me, and that magic moment has stuck with me now for, way over 40 years. I reeled in the line just to make sure he'd got away with it. I hurried down to Sammy, had him put another worm on the hook, and went back in search of more magic. I don't remember anything more about that trip, but with startling clarity, I can recall how I felt before that fish mugged me for my worm, and how I felt after he'd made the hit. Out of the darkness when I least expected it, when I might have been tempted to think there was nothing out there, a gentle tugging on my line told me I was in touch with life. And misery vanished. Misery became excitement. For those who fished all their lives and have caught about 11.5 million, this story may be old hat, but the experience was pure magic for me. Now, I know this doesn't rank as an argument, theological or philosophical, and I know it won't make any sense to those who can't share faith in Christ with me. But I think God watches us. And He knows that sometimes our poor little minds wander. Our faith falters. And the pressures of life weigh so heavily on us that we need something more. My sister Margaret put it like this, and I know she's right. She said, sometimes we're in special need of Him. He knows this, and He gives us a little something extra. He gives a little tug on our line to let us know that we're dealing with life when we're dealing with Him, that we aren't just shivering alone in the dark. It could be a remarkable answer to prayer, an incredible coincidence. A check in the post, a whispered apology that we were in crying need of, or an experience so uplifting that we can't do anything but look up and say thank you. And for you that are burdened long with pain you haven't sought, with pain you haven't brought on yourself, you who haven't yet experienced that little something extra, continue to be brave and strong and live without it. Trust Him anyway. And maybe when the ultimate day arrives, you who were gallant enough to live without the tug will receive a little something extra for being so brave. I believe that, and I like to believe it. I've taken this piece from my little book, Jesus, Hero of Thy Soul, published by Howard Publishing Company in Louisiana.